It is December 31st, 2024, at exactly 9:35 p.m., which means it is time to go through my top 15 comics of the year. These are the ones that released this year. And this is actually my first full year of reading comics. So I've got a little bit of a different perspective than some other people might. Got a lot of the same ones that I've seen a lot of people have. I've been trying to avoid other lists to not try to, sway mine. But my opinions might be more so focused on enjoyability of a comic rather than the artistic merits of it, just because I don't have as much of a refined taste yet. But that being said, I have 15 of my favorite, as I said, and a few honorable mentions, and then five at the end that were a little more disappointing to me that I was expecting more from. All right, so for number 15, I have a little bit of a hidden gem that I found. It's called The Last Delivery. It is not from any main publishers. I actually don't know if it's a publisher or if Evan Dom, the writer artist, published it himself. But either way, it's gorgeous and it's all done by him. There's not that much dialogue in it, but it's this story about this little turtle guy. He is a package delivery driver, and he has to go to this like hidden mansion sort of thing to deliver this package. And he has to go through all these rooms with these very interesting characters. He's trying to find the one person he's delivered it to. And I'm not going to go into spoilers about it, but the overall message I found really interesting about how this turtle is pushed and pushed and pushed just to fulfill his job that he feels like he absolutely has to. I would highly recommend it. I think I got it on Amazon for like $15, which is a steal for it's a really high quality book. It's an interesting story, and I really really liked it. So that was number 15. All right, so for number 14, I have The Ribbon Queen by Garth Ennis. I don't remember the artist's name off the top of my head, but it's a really, really interesting psychological, thriller, sort of a horror book, and it doesn't have as much, like hidden messaging as a lot of other books would, but it's just simply a really, really well done, well crafted horror book. And I don't think it's a spoiler, but the antagonist or the villain, the way he hurts the people, it literally peels off their skin, and it's really gross for a comic book. And I really liked it. It was like super engaging, and I'm not sure if they're going to do like a volume 2 or something, but I would be really interesting to see that. I know I had made the mistake of lumping Garth Ennis in with the same type of creators as like Mark Miller or whatever, and Warren Ellis, the same sort of people, like the edgy for just edgy sake. But after I've read a little bit more of his stuff, I'm finding out that it's a lot more meaningful to me than a lot of their other stuff, the other creators' works. And I'm really excited to see his other stuff. I know I've read a little bit of his Punisher, and I'm just not that big of a fan of the character himself, but it was really good. And for number 13, I have Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Volume 1. So issues, I think, 1 through 5 is where we're at right now. From uh, Jason Aaron. Jason Aaron wrote that one. And this is sort of like the sleeper hit of the year for me because I don't really care about the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles like a lot of people do. I mean, like I've seen a few of the movies, like the live action one, the one that just came out recently. And I just never really cared. But each issue's been sort of a standalone look at each of the turtles and how they stand, how they act, and it's been really compelling. I never thought that I would be so engrossed by a book like that, but it's really good, and I'm excited to see where it goes now that they've all the four turtles have been reconnected from where they were at previously. So maybe it won't be as strong as these initial issues were, but even on its own, it's really good, and I recommend that to anyone who's maybe not read any turtles before or has been skeptical. But Jason Aaron, I've liked a lot of the stuff he's written. He had a Punisher run that from 2022 maybe that a lot of people didn't like, but I enjoyed it. But yeah, give that a try if you're interested. And for number 12, I also have a little more of a hidden gem for me, which was called When to Pick a Pomegranate, and it's a very artistic book. It's very abstract in the art and also the storytelling, but it's a lot of it's like a few short stories about the main character. Her name was Gully, Guly, and then the pomegranate, which his name was Anar, and they both are like personified, and it bounces off each other, and it's just a really interesting perspective. And the messaging is not outright stated, but you get like a vibe. I don't know how to explain it other than it's just really an interesting perspective that I haven't seen before in any media, rather, not just comics, movies, music, anything. But like the themes of like shame, grief, guilt, off the top of my head, like really, really well done. And I think this was the author's, I'm going to butcher the name, but yeah, Yasmin, her first comic book work. So I'm excited to follow this creator, maybe see some other works in the future, but give it a shot if you haven't. When to Pick a Pomegranate. And at number 11, I have Where the Body Was by Ed Brubaker and Sean Phillips. You've definitely heard the combo before. They've done so much amazing work together. This was probably my favorite one that they've released this year. I wasn't as big of a fan as the Satanic Panic one. It was really good, but just didn't strike me as well. Anyway, Where the Body Was is about this little town, this little subdivision, and each character has their own plot going on, but they all interact with each other, and it's a murder mystery. And there's a resolution, so don't go into it like, oh, this is gonna be a trick where you don't actually get to know. No, you do know the answer at the end. And it's just a really well done story for them. And I think it is probably the most accessible story that they've done to date, in the sense that it's not as bleak as maybe their Criminal or the other one that I mentioned before. But it is just a really interesting crime thriller novel, and I liked every single one of the characters. They each had a very very distinct personality that balanced off each other really well. It's that team is probably the best team that I'm reading currently in comics. And if you aren't aware, each series they do is released in a hardcover format all at once. You're not reading issue by issue, month by month. But because they've built this reputation as being so good, people are willing to spend $20-$30 on this book all at once, and it's just really good. So give it a shot if you haven't. All right, so for my number 10 spot, this is one that's going to be on pretty much everybody's top 10. It is Ultimate Spider-Man by Jonathan Hickman and Marco Cicchetto. This is the first issue, second printing. But man, this story it's really good. And this is coming from someone who, is 19, so I'm not the age as Peter Parker is in this, but it's just a really good character study. The one thing that I've realized in the big two comics, especially, not so much with indie comics, is that a lot of comic writers don't write real relationships. They don't write how people actually function. And I think it's true for a lot of, 616 main universe Spider-Man 2. But this comic truly understands how people interact. And that's so relieving to read. And it's just not only that, like the actual action in it is engaging, really well done. The story's a little slow at times, and I think it's true for the entire Ultimate Universe right now, but it's just so good, so good. The dialogue is the best part. There's been maybe 2 or 3 issues out of the 12 or 13 so far that are just purely talking heads dialogue. But it is just, those are the best issues. It's so good. How people interact, you know, another thing that's been really gripping me with that one is the twists on the regular characters. Like obviously, Doc Ock has been really interesting. We haven't seen him in a while, but his character is very different. A lot more what's the word? Closed off compared to how he is in the main universe. And I'm really interested to see where that character is. I'm not as interested in Harry Osborn, but it's a unique look at the character. He's more argumentative than Peter is, and he wants to take these stances. But yeah, I'm really interested to see where this goes, especially with only 12 issues left in the Ultimate Universe. I think is there's 2 years until the Maker comes out. But anyway, I'm really interested to see where this one goes. And at number 9, I have another one everybody loves, and that's Ice Cream Man. This comic has probably stuck with me more than any comic has ever. I mean, like, I've read the entire series probably twice now, just because every single issue is incredible. There's only a few that I probably wouldn't be like, okay. But anyway, this year was probably a weaker one overall for the stories, just by looking at the dates of when these came out. But I want to focus on number 42, which is the most recent one. I think it came out maybe a month or 2 ago. And it's a lot more focusing on actual real world issues rather than these existential ones. And I have never had, this is spoilers by the way, I have never had a comic truly jump scare me in the sense that like a movie does, a horror movie, like this issue does. And spoilers once again, you're reading it and you're talking about the struggles that these in-universe characters are facing, and you turn the page and it's a news article about a real world issue. Like the one that I'm referring to was the school shootings one. You turn the page and you are instantly brought face to face with a news article that's talking about a real world school shooting. And that hit me, like a truck. That it really puts into perspective, the whole point of the issue is that, yeah, these small issues, feel like a lot, but these are the real problems that we need to address. And a lot of people on the League of Comic Geeks who were reviewing this issue were saying that W. Maxwell Prince needs to stop bringing so much politics into his comics. He needs to focus on the more philosophical angle. And I think it's a really stupid angle to take, because if you haven't been reading this whole series, it's pretty openly political. I mean, he's had issues where he's killed off heroin addicts simply because they're addicted. There's been homeless people. There's been, a sexual assault that's happened. Like these things are all very politically charged. Um, and I can't imagine not, you know, reading into your comics more to think about these things. Like I wish more people did, like, and at least this issue is a lot more upfront about what it's saying. And at number 8, I have The White Trees, by Chip Zdarsky and drawn by Chris Anka. And this one was also one I really wasn't expecting to enjoy. It's a one shot that released this year by those two, and it's a fantasy story that focuses on this father who was the most fierce warrior that the entire city had seen, and he's retired now, but he has to go back into war. That's a trope we've seen in a lot of movies and comics and various media. But this one takes a different approach where it's focusing on the character's, masculinity and how he's a very stoic person, but that really hurt his family, and the world building is just insane for only a 40 something page story. And it really, yeah, like I said, it really does truly understand um like what it means to be masculine in a world like that where they have warriors are seen up as such powerful figures in their society. But I think that that perspective is a good one to have when a lot of the time stories will focus on only the negative aspects of masculinity when there truly are positive ones. And it's good to focus on the negatives for all genders or whatever, but to also focus on the good side. And I do really really think that that was well done by Chip Zdarsky and Chris Anka. All right, so at number 7, I have Somna, not really sure how to say it, but by Becky Cloonan and Tula Lute. But anyway, similar to how Ultimate Spider-Man by Jonathan Hickman, like understands how healthy relationships work and how they are in the real world, I think that this one captures how unhappy ones do. And it also has some interesting backdrop with the 1600s witch hunt, where there really is a demonic spirit going on here, but the art in this is phenomenal by both the writer Becky Cloonan, I think, does some of the art, whereas Chula Lute does the more painted style. Both are phenomenal, but um, they both capture sex and eroticism like I haven't really seen in a comic before, and it's really well done without feeling like pornographic in a sense. Like there's a point to it, which I think is helpful, but it really does give you an insight into Ingrid, I think is the main character's name, her mental state, and her wanting to escape from her marriage, and the only way she's able to do that is with sex and eroticism through this demon. And that's a really interesting concept, and I think it's done very well, which is why I have it at number 7 on my list. And I really enjoyed it. All right, so at number 6, I have a less bleak book than the other ones so far, but I have a Spider-Man: Shadow of the Green Goblin, written by J.M. DeMatteis. And maybe I'm overstating how good this one is by just a little bit, but it hit me at the right place in the right time. I read it in single issues, but it's one of those stories where it's going back in time, retroactively, and it goes back to when Peter Parker was in high school, and it gives a more understanding of his mental state, and his relationship with Aunt May is done incredibly well in this series. I had recently read Craven's Last Hunt by J.M. DeMatteis and was like, wow, this guy's really good. So when I saw this one was coming out single issues, I knew I had to pick it up, and it's just really well done. I don't have much to say, in regards to the story. It's very good. It's an interesting villain that I think was brought over for this story. Like he existed before, but he wasn't very large. But it's just a really well done story, and I think you should definitely pick it up in trade when it comes out in a few months. I bet, because it just wrapped up. But J.M. DeMatteis, um, probably one of the best Spider-Man writers I've read so far, and I'm really excited to check out more of his work. I also forgot to mention that this focuses on Harry Osborn and his mom and his dad, and that dynamic was, I didn't think I was going to care about it, but it's really well done. So please check that one out. I think it's like a 4 or 5 issue miniseries. Check it out. All right, so at number 5, I have, got it right here, World Tree by James Tinian IV, and I feel like I should know that off the top of my head, but it's Fernando Blanco is the artist, and it's very great art. And James Tinian IV, I've been reading a lot of his stuff. He's more of a recent writer from what I can tell, but he does a lot of horror, and this is very much a horror thriller. And it has interesting concepts that I don't think I've really seen before. It introduces the undernet, which is basically internet below the internet. Um, and basically you get infected when you see this and you become part of this cult, if I remember correctly. Like I don't have much to say other than give it a shot. All right, so at number 4, ironically, I have Fantastic Four by Ryan North. This book is so good. I don't know how to explain it other than the pure joy I get every month when I see this in my pull box. But I just want to say, and I haven't thought this through entirely, but I think this is my favorite Fantastic Four run of all time. I follow this reading club called My Marvelous Year, where they go through like each year of comics, and right now we're covering Jonathan Hickman's Fantastic Four run, which is pretty much universally regarded as one of the best ever, and it is really good. I finished the first omnibus volume, and it's insanely good. But I held off on saying, "Is this my favorite? Is this my favorite Fantastic Four run?" Until I finished that, and now I can confidently say I still do think that Ryan North is the king that I've read. He introduced a lot of scientific concepts in such a easily understandable way. These are my 3 favorite issues that I read. This was number 11. And before I go into these 3, each issue usually focuses on 1, maybe 2, maybe 3 characters, and gives a very good uh, understanding of them. For this one, it's just Ben Grimm and this little dog. They're stuck in a constantly moving, wormhole or something like that, and he has to find a way to escape. And he's not the scientific brain, as you probably know, but he still has to, use the concepts that Reed and Sue have taught him to find a way to escape this. And how he does it is so funny. And I do think that's something that Ryan North does really well, is introduce these scientific concepts in a very readable way. Another one, also ironically, a thing issue with also Johnny Storm, where they both have to get hired to get a job because they're broke right now and they need money to pay for rent or something. I don't remember, and they have a little friendly competition to be who's the best employee at the place. But yeah, really fun issue. Third one, this one focuses on all the various kids that they've adopted over the years, and it's just I think they're at their school, just such fun issues. I think this is my probably tied with another one going to be up later for my favorite month to month issue, just because it's each issue is going to be its own story. And that's really, really nice to get monthly versus, waiting for trades. Another one I really liked was the Blood Hunt tie-in, where it focuses on Reed Richards and Alicia. They're trapped, and basically it ends up with Reed has overstretched himself over an entire building to try to keep out the vampires, and he's just it's kind of gruesome. He's like cut in the various places by overstretching, and he has to, like, when he comes back, he's like kind of flat, like Flat Stanley or something. um and the spoilers, but the end basically states that, Reed, you don't have to solve everything, sometimes it just works out. And that's a really fun conclusion to have there, where he basically has to admit to himself, I didn't fix it, but it still got fixed. So really, really interesting. And also interesting note is that my boyfriend, who's holding the camera right now, this is his favorite comic of all time, probably tied with Hawkeye by Matt Fraction. Just because it's so fun, it's so accessible to new readers, and he's not as into comics as much as I am. Not that he doesn't enjoy them, but I'm more like into the you know what I mean. But yeah, do you have anything to say about this comic?
I like that Ryan North is not scared to draw Reed's powers. I feel like a lot of Fantastic Four stuff that I've read, they really don't show how stretchy he can be, and Ryan North just does that. Like, I know he's not the artist,
Right.
but he plays with it like so much with just everything. It feels like he utilizes Reed's powers a lot more than other
That's very true.
Fantastic Four issues.
Yeah, I mean,
like
even
that.
in Hickman's one, I was expecting to see some cool uses, and there are, like, but just like when he's just having conversations, he'll just be in weird,
I like
weird.
his eyes.
Yeah, his eyes just he'll use binoculars. One issue recently, he morphs his whole like hands into a big shovel and is like digging out places. Like little shit like that is just so fun, and that's why it is number 4. All right, so before I go into my number 3 spot, just to confirm that Fantastic Four is the best, or Ryan North's Fantastic Four is the best, the segment we just recorded for number 4 was exactly 4 minutes and 44 seconds long. So I think that that's undeniable proof that it is the best Fantastic Four run of all time. But anyway, number 3 is another more hidden one. Is called Tender by Beth Hetland. This is a standalone graphic novel, also a horror, if you couldn't tell by this. And it really, really is just a gripping story, front to finish, all drawn by her as well. Minimal dialogue as well, very interesting art. But the main character is basically her, you know, not able to live up to the expectations that has been put on her. She is in a relationship with her husband or boyfriend, something like that, and they're having a kid. She loses the child, and she doesn't know how to accept that because she was, she thinks that that's what she is. She has to have this child. She knows that that's what her worth is worth, and she doesn't have the heart to tell her friends that she's basically losing her mind. She still believes that she has the kid. Well, she doesn't believe it, but she still pretends that she has the kid by like stuffing stuff in her shirt, still, stuff like that. She even has a baby shower for this kid that no longer exists. And it basically ends, spoilers, with her just completely losing it. She eats her cat. She, starts gnawing off parts of her body because it's not perfect enough. Horrible, horrible stuff. And it's done so well. The art is very, not basic in a bad way. I mean, it does it to its benefit. It's very, understandable until you get to the pages where it's, more graphic and it's drawn a lot more detailed. And that really helps get the point across. And this is another one of those things that I think you just need to experience yourself. Support these small creators. I don't know if this is her first work or not, but I'm really excited to read more from her. All right, so I'm going to have to cheat for my number one. I have two ties for number one. But before I get to those, I want to go through some honorable mentions. I'm not going to go into huge detail for these, but Transformers by Daniel Warren Johnson. I personally do not care at all about Transformers, the Energon universe. I've been reading a few of them. They're good. They work on their own without having that information. But of course, Daniel Warren Johnson's art, incredible, incredible. I really like the first volume. Second one, not as much. But either way, the one struggle I have with this is that because I don't have the experience from reading or I mean watching the cartoons and the movies and stuff, I don't really know who all these characters are, and they're kind of thrown at you so fast and so many all at the same time. I cannot keep track, and I don't have the attention span to go back and read. Okay, what was this one again? What was this one again? What was this one again? So it's just not for me. It doesn't mean it's bad. I really liked it. Next up, Spine Tingling Spider-Man by Saladin Ahmed, another horror book. It's been a lot this year, but this one really caught me off guard as well. It's one of those like a 4-issue series that could really take place anytime. Doesn't really matter for Spider-Man, and it's he's being hunted down by this villain who's playing tricks on him, making him see things. The art in it is just horrifying. I forgot the name. I'll put it on screen, but really well done, fast-paced horror comic for Spider-Man. Wasn't expecting it. That's why I put it on here. Next up is Immortal Thor by Al Ewing. It was going to be hard to live up to the legacy of Immortal Hulk because it's just so good. But I do think that the first volume does some really, really interesting stuff, especially with Loki. Especially with the first, I think, issue or two, just the Utgard, basically the gods of the gods. So interesting. Whereas the second and third volumes that have come out since then didn't do as much for me. It's been kind of putting those same concepts that I said before on the back burner, which has been meaning that I'm less interested. I do like a lot of the stuff that Dario Agger, the secondary villain, has been in, but it's just not doing it for me. And I've been waiting to read those maybe when it comes out with more issues. But anyway, next up is Marvel Unleashed, which is another 4-issue miniseries. It's sort of a Marvel telling of We Three, which I know is hard to admit because that's an incredible comic in its own right. But it's using these characters like Lucky the Pizza Dog, the Frog Thor, I forgot his name, but and it's just a really, really cute story about some pets from the Marvel Universe. Next up is Beneath the Trees Where Nobody Sees. I know everybody loves this comic. I loved it too. Don't think it was. It didn't hit me as hard as it did other people. Really well done. Patrick Horvath's art in it is phenomenal and fits it so well. The style is going for. Didn't hit me like other people did, and that's okay. And then last up is The Last Mermaid. Derek Kirk Kim is the writer artist. The art in this is just top notch. I don't think this might be the best art I've seen in all of comics this year. The story though was a little lacking for me. It's about this mermaid who she's in like a post-apocalypse desert landscape, and she has to constantly be getting fresh water, otherwise she'll die. And it's basically her adventure of trying to get to that fresh water over and over again, and just trying to survive with her little pet. I forgot what animal it was. They're really cute.
Yours?
No, those little they're in Minecraft.
Axolotl.
Axolotl, the little axolotl she has with her. Like I said, and I think I saw on Instagram or TikTok or something that the artist Derek Kirk Kim said he does about 2 or 3 panels, not pages, panels per day in a 12-hour time frame. So that is, I don't know how long it usually takes to do comic art. That is insane, and it shows. It's incredible. All right, so at number one, as I said, is tied between two of them. But first, the actual best comic of the year, Zdarsky Comic News, of course. It's incredible. He even made his own personal crossword puzzle you can make. Don't mind the ad, but he made his own crossword puzzle. Name another comic writer artist who does that for his fans. You can't. You can't name one. But for real though, tied for number one is Swan Songs by W. Maxwell Prince, same guy who does Ice Cream Man. This is basically the pitch is everything ends. But what that means is different in each story. Does that mean the end of a life? Does that mean the end of a meal? The end of just each issue is just so good. The standout for me was all of them, but number two, which is the end of a marriage, I believe, and then number three, which was the end of the world, I think, or end of the apocalypse. Yeah, the end of the world. It says the end of the world, chapter three. And don't know if I said this, but each issue has a different artist, which is different than Ice Cream Man, which only has Martin Morazzo as the art. But it's some stellar work here. Chapter one, Martin Simmons. Chapter two, Casper Wingard. Chapter three, Felipe Andrade. Caitlin Yarsky, not familiar. Alex Ekman and Martin Morazzo at number six. All of these stellar artists, and the stories probably hit me the hardest in the 6 issue miniseries. Just as hard, if not harder, than the ones in Ice Cream Man, just because it's so good. I don't want to give away, but yeah, number two especially was my favorite. The end of a marriage, so good. I don't want to give it away, but some yeah, please read it. Please read it. And then also tied for number one is The Ultimates. So good. Denise Camp, is writing a modern Ultimates run that's so different than the early 2000s one. Whereas I think that comic brought in a new generation of comic writing and art where it's more cinematic in the 2000s. That inspired the MCU as we know it. Whereas I hope this ushers in a new wave of comics that's more aware of the world, the real world, and is bringing attention to it. Each issue so far has been its own story, similar to other ones I mentioned, like Fantastic Four. But each issue's been focusing on a different character. Like in this one, we have She-Hulk of this world, and her whole island, I forgot the name of it, was basically irradiated, and this is why she has her powers. But her whole city is basically stuck living on this island because of the radiation she would her civilization has been subjected to, and it goes into the political ideals that would cause by this whole island of people who are much stronger than anyone else, and how they don't really need saving in so much the Ultimates think they do, but yeah, and then she ends up joining the team. Spoilers. Each issue focused on a different concept, like the one about Hawkeye. They're a Native American, and yeah, I don't want to go into spoilers as I said, but another one shot that came out for the series was Ultimate Universe 1 Year In, which focused on the Ultimate Universe version of Nick Fury. Incredibly good Nick Fury comic. It really got to the crux of the character, I think, better than a lot of other Nick Fury stuff I've read. It's not a character I really care about, but man, it was really good. And basically, the Makers Council, how they have indoctrinated the world around them, and I do think that the one thing that is lacking right now is it doesn't feel like the center of a universe as it should, in the sense that the other series aren't feeding into it like I would expect. But just on its own, this series is the best comic coming out of the big two, month to month, and I am really excited to see where it goes and how, maybe Dennis Camp can weave these political messaging in with the story as it comes to when the maker comes back to the universe. But yeah, those were my top comics of the year. A lot of ones I'm sure are going to be on other people's lists. But then to go on to some of my least favorite. All right, so not to end on a downer note, but I am going to go over a few of my less favorite, disappointing comics of the year. So one that I know everyone agrees on was Amazing Spider-Man by Zeb Wells. Unfortunately, just still did not do great. Gang War specifically is the one I want to focus on. This was in around like November of 2023, was the first event. I was like, wow, this is an event. This is going to be so fun to buy every issue of. Bought in every single issue. Horrible experience. Don't do that. The Amazing Spider-Man issues specifically were not fun, not interesting. Doesn't take the concept of an actual gang war anywhere, really. It just ends at one point with, like a civil war of the two factions, but nothing actually happens. And I went back recently and I tried to read a little bit more of that Amazing Spider-Man run to see if maybe that was just one arc that wasn't very good. But that whole series just isn't doing much for me. And I know that everyone's kind of ragging on it, so I don't want to spend too much time on it. But next up is the Bone Orchard Mythos by Jeff Lemire, specifically Tenement, which is the final one in the trilogy that ended. And the reason why I focus on this is that Sorrentino, Andre Sorrentino, it's pretty clear in the last issue or two of Tenement that he used AI art, which is something I don't support at all, especially in comics, and that really disappointed me because I'm not even one who can really pick up on that sort of thing. But I was reading the hardcover. I bought the hardcover of this, and I was like, "Wow, this looks kind of fishy." And I googled it, and there was some speculation about it. So that's unfortunate. And then next up is Avengers by Jed McKay. It started off pretty promising. This was the first comic I read by Jed McKay, and I do think this is probably his weakest right now. It's not really doing anything interesting. I find his dialogue to be a lot more childish in this book compared to his other stuff like Moon Knight. And it's just not really going anywhere. It's spinning its wheels. I'm not sure if that's a controversial opinion, but nothing really going on there. Next up is Daredevil by Saladin Ahmed, which is a series I've been following since issue one. And I know a lot of people say this, but I truly think it really stands for this one is that sometimes a concept is better than the execution, right? The concept of this run is insanely good. You know, Daredevil has to fight the seven deadly sins manifested into people. Like that is insane. Like that is such a cool concept for a Daredevil story, especially for Daredevil's been more on a street level kick recently. But execution has been pretty bad in my opinion. It started off okay, but it's so slow too. Like we are, I don't remember, like 15, 16 issues in, and we're still on the seven deadly sins, and we haven't faced one in like five or six. It stopped the story midway through just to talk about Kingpin and Bullseye when they didn't have anything to do with the sins, if I remember correctly. And the art has changed almost every single issue from the main artist, Aaron Cooter, to some horrible, and I hate to say that because I really do like Daredevil, but some not good art at all. Some of these issues have been, and the writing is so childish compared to how Daredevil should and has been treated in the past. You gonna say something?
Rizzy.
Oh yeah, there's a character called Mr. Rizzy, and I think that kind of just shows that they're trying to be a little childish. Maybe that's just a coincidence, but you know, um, not a fan of that. Hopefully it gets better, but I don't think it will, unfortunately. And then last up is the entirety of X-Men's From the Ashes movement era, whatever you want to call it. It's been a huge disappointment as someone who's, come into comics. I watched X-Men 97 with my partner and we really enjoyed it. As some people, we both have not really been introduced to the X-Men before. So we thought, oh, this new era revamp that they're doing is going to be really interesting and a good way to get introduced to these characters. Some of the most bland, not bad, but bland comics I've ever read, in that there is really just no soul in many of these. The standalones, I've only read the first issues of all these series, so take that like what I'm saying with a grain of salt. It might get better, but the two exceptions that I've had are Exceptional X-Men. I read the first issue and I really thought it was really interesting. However, I'm not sure how long that would last. The it's very different. It's not an X-Men book. It's a Kitty Pryde book. And then another one that I read the first issue really liked was Uncanny X-Men by Gail Simone. Um, I like it, but I'm not sure if it's only because I like the characters in it, not so much that the actual story is good. Like I love Rogue and Gambit, especially from X-Men 97, as everyone knows. But I'm not sure how much of it has to do with the story and how much I just like the characters. So I am probably going to pick up the first trade of both of those stories and maybe some of the side projects like Storm if they're getting good reception. But it's just so frustrating to have a movement like this that's supposed to entice new readers with this really insanely popular show, but they aren't able to do that in a unique way. And I know that I haven't been reading much of it, but the DC All In on the opposite side has been doing a little bit more, creative freedom with these stories, and that's just really disappointing. So those were five disappointing comics. But yeah, this year was just really good as someone who's getting into comics. Like I said, I've been following the My Marvelous Year podcast, which has been most of my readings have been, which is not stuff coming out this year. But I was shocked to see how many of my favorite comics were horror based because I am not a huge horror person. When it comes to movies and stuff, but a lot of these stories, maybe that was just a coincidence, but about half of these I think were horror or thriller. So that was really interesting. So maybe next year will be super lighthearted comics for my top 15. But yeah, that's about it. Hope you enjoyed the video, and I'm gonna be excited to see other people's top 10, top 15s.